And welcome back, everybody. Today we're going to be going over my second round game that I played in the FIDE Grand Prix here in Berlin. Now, before we jump into the game, I alluded to what happened yesterday on Twitch and all of that, but I will add one of the very difficult things, and I will say this also for the people who are wondering how I dealt with it, is that last night I actually slept only about 2 to 3 hours. I was tossing and turning, I was shaking, I was obviously very, very upset about what happened. So anybody who is under the impression that somehow this didn't affect me or it was planned or, I knew it was going to happen, that was not the case. So I just want to point that out first before we jump into the game, just so everyone is aware of the circumstances. All right, so without further ado, we'll jump into the game. Now, one thing that's also important to note is because I obviously did not get much sleep, I was not feeling great, and I had very, very low energy, is I wanted to play something simple. So I started by playing d4, knight to f6. Now I play c4, e6 is played, knight c3, and now bishop b4 going into the Nimzo Indian. I play e3, castles, and now I played this very unusual move, bishop d2. Now, for those of you who do watch my stream on Twitch, there's been a meme very recently, which is that Parham would do this, Parham would do that, and this variation in the Nimzo Indian with bishop d2 has in fact been played by none other than Parham. So if Parham would do it, then why shouldn't I? So bishop d2 is played, d5 played by Andrey, knight f3, b6, all pretty standard theory. Once again, not going to get too deep into the weeds. It's pretty straightforward in terms of what the plans are for both sides. So c takes d5, e takes d5 is played here. And now in this position, I play the move bishop to d3. Again, I want to put the bishop on this very nice diagonal, targeting h7, but also keeping possibilities on the other diagonal towards a6 as well. So rook to e8 is played by Andrey, and now I castle here, and he plays bishop b7. Now in this position, I used a lot of time. I was debating whether to play this move knight to e5 or whether to also play this move rook to c1. Now both moves are playable, but ultimately I decided to play knight e5. So now bishop to f8 is played by Andrey. Now in retrospect, I felt this move was not the best move. I felt that here he should have played knight bd7, f4, and something like bishop takes c3, and knight e4. And I know the computer gives white a very small advantage here, but at the board, I wasn't so convinced. I was actually really, really happy that he did not play knight d7 and he went bishop f8, because now after f4, c5, I have this nice move bishop e1. And I thought in this position, I should be quite a bit better here. So Andrey trades on d4, and he goes knight c6. Worth noting here that knight to e4 does not work. Black would love to play this move so that he can play f6 and remove the knight from e5. For example, this knight is really well placed on e5. But again, if black is able to push the pawn and get rid of the knight, then there could be some issues for me. Additionally, you'll look at the knight on e4 and notice that my pawns are extended here on d4 and f4. So I can never put a pawn on f3 or d3 to attack the knight on e4. So knight c6 is played here. Now, as I said, knight e4 was not playable because after knight to e4, I have a very nasty tactic, which is I can play this move bishop takes e4, pawn takes bishop, and now I have this shocking move knight takes f7, attacking the queen on d8. Now, of course, black takes the knight, and now I play queen b3 check. And what you'll notice is black cannot bring the king back to g8 and hide in the corner, so the king is kind of stuck here in the middle of the board. Now, if black goes to either e7 or f6, it's pretty straightforward in that I have bishop h4, to win the queen on d8. And if black blocks the rook on e6 here, I can now push the pawn to f5, and I will win this rook on e6 because of the pin. And so the only move that black can try here is king g6. But now after f5 check, if black goes king g5, for example, in this position, I can play knight to e2 here, and I just swing everything over to the king side, and there will be a checkmate pretty soon. One sample line that I would show is a move like bishop d5 here. Now I go bishop h4 check, king takes h4, queen to g3 check, king to h5, and now this very nice move, I believe it was rook f4. I'm not 100% sure if this was the correct move, but rook f4, and now after bishop to e7, I can play this move queen takes g7, followed by knight g3 checkmate. King simply has no squares here. So again, this is very, very tricky, and if your opponent isn't really ready or sharp or expecting this, this would be a very nice way to win a game here. However, of course, Andrey is a very strong player, and he does not make this blunder. Instead, he plays knight to c6, and now I go bishop f2. Now, I thought a long time here about possibilities. I really didn't want to put the bishop on f2. Again, you'll notice that I have this really nice bishop on d3. I've got a great knight on e5, and I really would love to go bishop h4 and put more pressure on the diagonal towards the queen. Unfortunately, if I play bishop h4 here, black can play knight takes d4, and now if I go bishop h7, king takes bishop, queen takes knight, there's a very nasty move, bishop c5, winning the queen on d4 here. So unfortunately, I have to play bishop f2. Now again, I still felt that I should be better here, but the problem with the position is that black has a very obvious idea. He wants to go knight to e4. And that's really the only plan that black has. Move the knight from f6 and push the pawn to f6. If white is able to play like queen f3, rook e1, g4, g5, and get an attack on the king side here, this will be very, very dangerous and probably winning for white. So after bishop f2, Andrey plays a6, and now I played a3. Now in retrospect, I wasn't very happy with this move, but the reason I did it is that I felt that if I played a move like queen to f3 here, there was something like knight b4, bishop to b1, and now a move like knight e4. Now again, the computer sort of laughs at this idea because here I can just go a3, removing the knight on b4. So in retrospect, I probably should have done this, but I was kind of worried about these ideas. I thought that after I play a3, it's twofold. First of all, I stop knight b4, but also, for example, black can also try to go bishop b4, something like rook c1, and then go knight e4 like this as well. So I thought it was a dual purpose move. Basically, by playing a3, I stopped both the knight and the bishop from going to b4 here. However, now black can play b5, and the real problem here is that now black is not able to put a knight or a bishop here, but there's a very simple idea of pushing the pawn to b4. So for example, if I play a random move like, let's just say h3 here, black can go b4, and now if let's say I don't take, I go knight e2, now black can go knight to e4, and he's completely fine. And if I do take after knight b4, you'll notice that when I move the bishop, there's no a pawn to kick the knight from b4, so now after knight e4 again, black is completely fine. So here I spent a long time, and I chose to play the move rook c1. Now, of course, it's very funny looking at this with the computer, because I saw briefly the computer was saying even bishop b1 is a move, but it's not very human to put the bishop on b1 with the rook in the corner. The rook just looks like it's completely out of the game here. So I thought if I go rook c1 first and then bishop b1, the rook is in the game. So queen e6 is played here by Andrey, and now I play this move queen to f3, and now rook a c8. And now it's in this position that after using a lot of time, I did not play the best move. What I really wanted to play here was I really wanted to go g4. But what happens is after g4, there's this move knight to e4. And now if I take with the knight and I take with the queen to threaten checkmate, black can actually go g6 here. And there's this huge problem that I have on this light square diagonal from b7 towards h1. And if I take with the bishop here, black can actually play knight takes d4, in between move hitting the queen. If I take on d4, black takes back, and black is winning. And if I move the queen to, let's just say e3, for example, black can simply trade everything off on c1, trade on e4, and go knight e6. And again, my king side is very loose here. I push these pawns to f4 and g4, and my king is quite exposed. So in this position, after rook a c8, I play this move rook fe1 here. So I play rook fe1, again, very logical move, trying to overprotect the e4 square and potentially put more pressure on the e file as well. So after rook e1, knight to a5 is played here by Andrey. So after knight a5, now I go pawn to b4 here. So after playing pawn to b4 here in this position, knight to c4 is played here by Andrey. Now again, in retrospect, like I said, rook e1, g4, maybe even b4 is a move as well, are all possible, but it's very, very hard because they're all very committal, and I thought rook e1 is the most flexible move. But now after knight a5, I play the insane move, I go b4 here. Again, as I alluded to before we started the commentary on the game, I did not sleep very much, and at this point I already was feeling a little bit low on energy, and I thought that, you know what, I just have to go for some plan. I felt like I was running out of steam and I couldn't do pure calculations at this point. However, g4 would have been a very good move because now after knight to c4, I can play this in between move bishop f5, hitting the rook, and after rook c7, now I go g5, and according to the computer, this is completely winning. However, after bishop f5, black can maybe play a move like knight to e4, and there still is a lot of counterplay here. So instead, I play b4. Knight to c4 is played here by Andrey. Now I take with the bishop. He takes back, and I go knight a4. Now, my plan behind this move was basically to use these knights on c5 and e5. Both are kind of outposted here, and I thought I had enough play. However, looking back, it was a big mistake because even though the knights are very well placed on c5 and e5, long-term black is going to be able to break the pawn structure on the queen side, and he's also going to be able to kick the knight out of e5. So I'm going to be forced to do something with the knight on c5 as well. So now I play queen to e2 here. Andrey plays a5, an excellent move, a move that I completely overlooked, or I guess I should say I didn't overlook the move, I overlooked the concept, which is that if I trade on e4 here and I play this move knight takes c4, black is a very nasty move, queen to a6, lining up this pin towards the rook on c1 and the queen on e2. After this move, I can still maybe play rook c2, and after takes bishop b4, rook c1, I can try to put the knight on e3, but again, black is quite a bit better here, and it's very, very hard to play. So instead I play queen a2. Now the idea behind queen a2 is quite simple. I still want to force black to do something about the knight, and if he doesn't, I'll simply take and take on c4 because the queen is no longer on e2, so there'll be no ideas with queen a6 creating a pin. So after queen a2, Andrey trades. He plays rook b8. Fantastic move, understanding that once again there's no pawn chain now. I have a sole pawn on b4, and eventually the bishops are both going to become very active, and black is simply quite a bit better here. So now I play this move knight takes e4, d takes e4, and now I go knight takes c4. Again, at this point the only thing I can do is try to struggle on. So queen e6, queen e2, rook takes b4, and now I play this move bishop e3. Now again, I suspect that I probably should have played knight e3 here, just chucked a pawn on d4, played rook d1 and said, you know what, even here black is up a pawn, but it's blockaded by this knight on e3, and I think that I probably have very good drawing chances here, and compared to the game I think this would have been a better option objectively. So instead I play bishop e3, bishop to d5 is played here. Now I go knight to d2, rook to b2 is played here by Andrey, and once again black has the bishop pair. He has a protected pass pawn on the center. So what do I want to do here? Basically I want to trade down the heavy pieces if I can. Obviously I'd love to trade a knight for a bishop as well, but that's not really feasible here. So instead I play rook b1, rook a b8, I trade the rooks and I go rook b1. Now here Andrey plays queen b6. Now again, I felt that he should have tried to at least keep one set of rooks on the board here, because without rooks on the board and only a queen and bishops, it seems very tough for black to win. So queen b6 is played, and now here I go queen f1. Now the reason I want queen f1 versus say another move like queen e1 or d1 is very simple. If I go queen d1, let's just say h6, I don't have a trick here. Whereas after queen f1, if black plays a move like h6, I have this very tricky in-between move, knight c4, forking the queen and the rook. If black takes the rook, I take the queen, and now this endgame with the knight and bishop versus the two bishops should be a pretty routine draw. And if black takes on c4, I trade the rooks on b2, I take on c4, and again with only a queen and a bishop on the board, this should be pretty easy to draw as well. So that's the reason that I played queen f1 here, was to set up this trap. So now Andrey plays queen b4, I trade and I go queen b1. Again, if queens come off the board here, this will be a very easy position to draw with the bishop and the knight versus two bishops, primarily because I can simply set up a fortress, just to show you guys some position like this where I can actually just sit and wait forever. And again, the knight covers all the critical squares, and black never has any entries. Even if he can somehow magically get the king all the way to a5, there's still no entry. So this knight is amazing, and if black ever trades, it's opposite color bishops, so it's a very easy draw. So again, Andrey doesn't want to trade the queen, so he goes queen a3, I go king f2, and now he plays h6, queen b5, queen a8. Now I play this move f5. Now it works out in the game that I'm able to hold the draw with this move. Conceptually, the reason I played this was basically I wanted to take away squares from the bishop. I wanted this bishop to always be under attack, so the queen would never be able to move away. For example, after h3, I thought maybe he could do something like bishop e6 at some point, and now he's a free hand to use the queen, bring it down to a2 or a1. So when I play f5 here, the whole point is basically to take away squares from this wooden shield in the center of the board, and black doesn't have a square now, so the queen always has to kind of worry about protecting the bishop. So that's the reason I did this. Again, I suspect that it's not the best way to play, but I like the concept of trying to make black's life difficult where he doesn't have an obvious plan. So now we get bishop e7, I play g3, bishop f6, play h4. Now this move is probably not necessary, but the reason I played this is very simply that I want to stop black from ever having bishop g5. Say he can magically put the queen on a2 and get some bishop g5, there could be some pressure here, so I didn't really want to allow this in the situation. So here I play h4, stopping bishop g5. Queen a2 is played, and now I basically set up my defensive positioning here with queen b8, queen b1, and now queen b5. And I basically tell Andrey that your bishop is kind of always under attack here. The only square the queen can move to is d8 or a2. Now again, he can always go to d8, but even here, if I just keep sitting with my king in the center, it's really hard for black to do anything. If you put the bishop in the corner, again, I can still, actually I should be careful because d4 is hanging, but I can still play a move like queen a4. And you always have this question, what do you do with the bishop? So at this point, I had a pretty clear idea of what I was setting up, and if it didn't work, well, so be it. So king g8, king g1, and now we do a little bit of a dance here. I go king g2, queen a2 is played, not bishop d4, by the way, because after takes e3 here, I can go king f1, pawn takes knight, king e2, and after queen to a2, guarding the pawn, I can interpose with queen b2, offering the queen trade, and I'm going to win this pawn on d2, and again, opposite color bishops, it'll be a pretty routine draw here. So instead he plays queen a2. I go queen c5, not king f2 here, because then bishop takes d4 would be winning the game. So I go queen c5, king h7. Now I go here, bishop d8, and now I have a very important move, queen to f8, attacking the bishop. Now the reason that I play this move is black really would love to put the bishop on a5 to attack the knight on d2, but now if he goes bishop a5 here, I can actually play the shocking f6 move, creating a classic lolly checkmate or a lolly checkmate attempt, and now white is actually winning the game because you have to take the pawn. I take here, and after king g8 I can simply take on f6, bishop d2, queen g5, king f8, bishop d2, and white is winning here. So again, that's the whole point behind playing queen f8. So he goes back, I wait on c5 again, and as I said, at this point I'm basically just setting up my defensive positioning and telling Andrey, whatever you do, I'm just going to move my queen or move my king here. I'm going to move my king to g1 g2 or move my queen to like b5 b6 or f8 here. It's also worth noting black, as I said, can't really improve the positioning of the bishop or the queen, so the only piece that he can try to improve is the bishop. Again, it's not really doing a whole lot on this f6 square. d4 is very well protected, h4 is also very well protected, e7 of course is covered as well. So the only idea black has is to try and swing the bishop to the queen side. So h5 is played here by Andrey, and at this point it's worth noting I was making my moves pretty much, I don't want to say instantly, I was using a minute or two, but I was not spending a lot of time, whereas Andrey was using a lot of time trying to get to this point. And already after h5, I believe at this point he only had about a minute and a half left on the clock, with the increment of course, but no secondary control or no gaining an extra half hour. So now I play king g1, bishop to d8, and I go queen f8 again. Obviously goes back, as I said before, bishop a5 still runs into f6. Although it is worth noting he could have tried to maybe go queen a8 here, but I was still just going to wait with king f2. And the problem is that, or actually sorry, I was going to wait with I believe king g2, and the problem is still if he tries to go to c8, I have f6 and he can't take with the bishop because of the pin, and b8 is the same thing. Again, I have this very weird pin towards the queen on b8 or c8, so I think I was just going to sit and wait, chill, and ask Andrey what the follow-up was, because here you'll notice the queen is now tied to the bishop, so like the queen can't come down because you lose this bishop. So basically in essence, by playing this f5 move, I really try to dominate the two bishops. So here he plays bishop f6 back, queen c5 of course, queen a8, now I go queen b5. Now again, he didn't have to play h5 earlier, but the one drawback to playing h5 is that now I have a clear-cut plan to bring the queen back and attack the pawn. And it's also worth noting that f5 is really the only major weakness that I have in this position. So if black, for example, has to play a move like, let's just say queen d8, queen e2, and he has to trade, now after queen f2, it's a very easy draw because I no longer have the weakness on f5, and d4 is amply protected here, and black has some slight dark square weaknesses around his king as well. So here Andrey plays king g8, now I go king f2, bishop c6, and I go back, he goes here, and I play bishop g5. Now at this point I think Andrey was definitely a little bit unsettled because he was down to about 30 seconds, but more importantly I'm able to trade a set of the bishops. So if I'm able to trade these bishops, let's say takes, and he plays something like queen d8, there are some tricks like I go knight f1 here, and let's just to illustrate the point, say g6, f6 is played, bishop e6, and knight e3. White is actually quite a bit better here because now I have a protected passed pawn and my knight is blockading this pawn at e4, so white has some serious winning chances here. So Andrey plays queen a2, I go queen c3. Important move, by the way, because what queen c3 does is I cut off all the entries. Black would love to get the queen to a1 or b1 and slide it to h1, but the knight and the queen cover the two squares. So the queen and the knight basically prevent the black queen from entering. So now Andrey plays queen a4. Correct move, not trading, by the way, because trading would actually be a little bit dicey, because now if I ever get g6, there are chances to maybe create a back rank checkmate here towards the king on g8. So he correctly plays queen a4. I trade, and now I play this move queen e3. Now I thought for about 4 or 5 minutes here, and I really almost want to play knight f1. Again, same idea. If black plays a random move like queen d7, I get knight e3. Black's pawn structure is very bad, and again, I'm going to be rolling this d pawn up the board, so I would have winning chances. However, black can play queen a2 check here, and if I block with the queen, he has this move e3. Very important move. I can't take with the queen because of the pin. I can't take with the knight because I lose my queen, so I have to take with the king. But now after a move like queen to a3, I have to block, and now there's queen c1 followed by bishop c4, again creating more right triangles. And if I block with the knight after queen g1, king e2, again should be fine for me. I'm not really in danger, but I can never win because now the bishop on d5 is simply amazing here, and the game will be a draw. And I didn't really see any reason to take this risk because I do suspect if anyone is better here, it's probably black. So instead I go queen e3, queen c2, and now I play queen e2, again trying to get knight f1 e3, but Andrey's having no part of it. He simply plays queen c3, queen e3, queen c2, queen e2, queen c3, queen e3, and we agree to a draw here. So a very, very hard fought game. Now from my standpoint, probably there were a couple of critical moments in the middle game. You know, whether I should have found the best moves, you know, hard to judge. There were definitely some opportunities somewhere around here. It felt like I was a little bit better, but I couldn't quite come up with the right plan. That being said, I obviously was kind of running low on energy. I didn't really feel like I had a lot of gas in the tank, so it's a little bit hard for me to really be overly critical about my play. That being said, I probably had an advantage, so it's a little bit unfortunate I couldn't press, but I also was quite a bit worse later on, and therefore a draw is also a very respectable result. So anyway, we draw the second game. The other game in my group was drawn between Levon Aronia and Grigorio Parin, so I'm going to try and get some good sleep tonight, try to refocus, reset after all of the very unsettling events last night, and hopefully tomorrow is a new day, and hopefully I'm able to put a W on the scoreboard. So I hope you guys enjoyed the analysis. I will continue to do analysis of my games every day, since I'm obviously not able to do anything on Twitch for the next couple of days still. Hope you enjoyed it. Have a good one, you guys.
So far we have quite peaceful round, and it's a 7th draw actually. So how was it happening? How was it going today?
Yeah, I mean, okay, I guess I tried to get something interesting after yesterday. But I mean, I think objectively, the problem is it's too easy for black to play for the most part. I think basically we play around these two squares, e5 and e4, and I mean, at some point I thought I should just maybe trade some knights on c6, maybe make some draw, but I didn't really want to, and so I just kept playing. And I mean, this whole idea, I think, was, I mean, b4 and knight a4 was just insane. I mean, I think it was completely crazy, but I wanted to play, and yeah, and then after that I was struggling, but I mean, it was kind of funny because it was similar to the previous game, I think, in a way where Andrey had a much better position, and then somehow at the end, like, it actually I started for a second to think that maybe I could try and win once these bishops get traded on f6, but okay, it's nothing special.
Yeah, how was it for you today, Andrey?
Yeah, really tough game. I think after the opening I had some problems. But then after the opening, I think I was close to big advantage, I think, at some point maybe. Yeah, but I don't know how actually. Yeah, and after this, when I had time trouble, I was very nervous not to lose because it would be really bad for the tournament. Yeah.
What was the most critical moment for you in that game?
Critical moment, I think.
A few of them.
When I played a5, I think I couldn't understand how worse I am, or even if not worse, maybe even a little bit better. So I played a5, and after that I realized that probably my position should be better. Yeah, and after this, I don't know. Yeah.
How difficult it was to try to crack at the end the position of white?
Yeah, I didn't know how to break it until Hikaru played f5. But after this, I thought maybe I had some chances, but it's still probably drawish.
Hikaru, what you will try to do now that, let's say, after 2 games, how do you feel about your shape in general?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think I slept maybe 2 hours last night, so I'm very tired right now. So, yeah, I mean, I have other things to worry about. I'll put it that way.
Do you mean jet lag at the moment, or what happened? Why only 2 hours?
Yeah, other things. Yeah, other things I'll talk about it, in a few days. But I mean, okay, I think you try to play good moves, and I mean, I think there were 2 critical moments. This moment Andrey played b5, and I have this bishop h4, and then probably around this time that he plays a5. I mean, those are two moments. But also then this f5, g3 h4. I didn't want to do it. I thought I'd just sit and make the draw, but I kind of didn't. Somehow I just didn't want to just leave the pawns on like f4 and g3 and just wait like this, so I tried to be creative with this f5, which, I mean, okay, maybe it's nothing, but I mean, it definitely is not the practical way of approaching the situation. So yeah, but we take it 1 game at a time.
Yeah, for sure. I wish you to have better sleep in the next night and solve all your problems and just focus on chess. Thank you very much. Thank you.